point out, somebody asked who I thought the last great Republican president was, and I'm a huge Eisenhower fan. I'm a huge Eisenhower fan, and I have a friend who's a Trumper who always points out, always says, "I want to go back to the 1950s," and I always say, you know what? Me too. Let's go back to the 1950s when the top income tax bracket was 91%. Eisenhower recognized that if you created extremes of wealth in society and created castes in society based either in ideology or religion or wealth, you would end up with the kinds of extremism that we have got now, which would result either in fascism or communism or religious extremism. And that's what he always worked to combat, to make sure that people everywhere had a rising standard of living that they shared with each other. And he's a really interesting man because one of the ways he gets there is by witnessing what happened in the death camps in um, Poland after the war, World War II, in which he says, I just didn't know people could do this to each other. I didn't believe that human beings could do this. We must stop this from ever happening again. The reason I mention that is because one of the things that you're seeing from Trump is the constant referral to Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, as a Marxist, which, speaking of questions to ask Trump, what is a Marxist, right? Tell us about Karl Marx, about whom, I bet he couldn't pick him out of a lineup, right? But the way you get to the idea that we have embraced in America since the 1950s, that people who want government regulation and a basic social safety net are socialists or communists comes out of Reconstruction. And it is this. In the period after the Civil War in the 1860s, the Republican Congress uses the federal government to protect the rights of Black Americans, right, who are the people in the American South who sided, as a body, sided overwhelmingly with the United States of America. And they do so through the 14th Amendment and the 15th Amendment. I won't go through all these, but the 15th Amendment makes it unconstitutional to discriminate against voting on the basis of race. And that's in 1870. And in 1871, lawmakers in South Carolina, and there's a long history behind this, but lawmakers in South Carolina start to say to the Northern Republicans, who at this point, remember, we still have troops in the South. I mean, we always have troops in the South, but Reconstruction is still very much underway. They start to say, hey, don't worry about us, because we also have the Department of Justice in 1870. Don't worry about us doing anything based on race. We don't care about race. Literally the same person, the same people who were complaining about race just the year before. So we don't care about race. What we care about is that the Black people, the Black men in the South who are voting, come from the fields and the kitchens. They don't have any education. They don't have any property. And if you let them vote, they will elect lawmakers, and by this they meant white lawmakers at the time, who will vote for things like schools, because remember, there's no schools in the South then, no public schools, and hospitals, ditto, and roads, again, ditto. And they're going to vote for these things that, of course, white people will use as well as Black people, but the only way to pay for those things is going to be with taxes. And because white people are the only ones who have any property, white men are the only ones who have any property, what Black voting will mean is a redistribution of wealth, because those taxes are going to have to be paid for by white people. The benefits of building these roads and all that, Black people are going to use those too. So what that means is that Black people voting means a redistribution of wealth from hardworking white men to undeserving Black people. And this, they say, is socialism. And beginning in the spring of 1871, they begin to call it communism. Now, this is way before you get the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. This is because in March through May of 1871, in Paris, a group called the Communards take over the city of Paris and run it as a commune. And so that term gets picked up in the United States, and they begin to say that people who want minorities to vote are communists. And this linkage of race and class in America to say that minority voting, and later on by 1970, not 1870, that's going to include women, is communism or socialism, comes not from the actual tenets of socialism or communism, both of which are based in the idea that the people own the means of production through the government. So rather than being able to go build a factory yourself or having a great idea and creating the newest widget, the government will own those companies and those corporations. That's what's at the heart of socialism and communism. Instead of having that in the United States, what socialism and communism means is minority voting, because of this idea that taxation to create a public good like a road or a school or a hospital is itself a redistribution of wealth. It's really different than world communism or world socialism, and that's what Trump is talking about. And if you look around you, I hear this all the time. I'm worried about communism. I'm worried about socialism. Show me in the United States of America where the government is trying to take over a private business. I mean, show me, because what we are seeing is actually on the far other end of the scale, which is much closer to fascism. And that's when you have the government and business and the military working together to create an upper caste which directs the actions, including the work, but also the what's the word, nationalism, but also the military experience of the masses, right? So we're much more close to that end than we are to those masses actually owning those things. And it's just, Trump has said the only way, that the only thing I need to do to win this is to make people think she's a communist. And, we're absolutely nowhere near communism in this country. Never have been. The John Birch Society, which was a right-wing organization, was always significantly bigger than the Communist Party in the United States. All right.